one man's mind said to his consciousness, "Now that I understand what you're trying to do and have in fact had a taste myself of your periodic successes therein, I want to tell you that I will with pleasure submit to your expanded authority, and ask only that whenever I must so be dispatched that you will kill me as quickly as possible." And consciousness replied, "'Twas unnecessary for you to ask, since 'tis exactly what I am attempting to do from each moment to the next." A man who tells you his philosophy of life doesn't actually have one. That is, he doesn't know how to live, so he adopts a scheme of how to. It is thus that there is nothing at which to scoff regarding man's involvement in the trendy and fashionable civilized world, in that it is natural for cows to feel more comfortable and secure in a herd, with the periodic cry of a cowpoke directing, "Yo, little doggies, over this way." I know you're out there. I hear your bells tinkling. Social custom on a stick. Everyone loves a man who knows what he's doing, except, of course, those who have no idea what's going on. How can you explain that you can't read your own typing? I can't. Social custom on a stick. Everybody loves a man who knows what's going on, except, of course, those who have no idea what's going on. That's so pathetic it's past any point of criticism or just... All you can do, just like an 18-wheeler with 17 blown out, just roll on. A history you never hear. First, man believed in silence. Then he believed in sound. Next, he believed in the sun. Then he believed in the forest. Then he believed in gods. Next, he believed in submission. Then in his own abilities and domination of silence, sound, the woods, and the sky. And soon he will once again be looking back at the sun. Suggesteth I. At the routine mental level, there is no substitute for ignorance. No, not even knowledge. Okay, there is one. Originality. But who the hell is ever going to go to all that trouble? Know what I mean? One day, one man took some of his hormones to the library with him. And after they'd looked around a while, they said to him, "If you don't mind me saying so, or us saying so, you people sure could save yourselves a lot of needless effort with all that separating and classifying, because everything in here is fiction." A viewer sends along this question for today's guest expert. Dear Professor Exacto, does the ratio of muscle to fat physically bear any relationship to the ratio of thought to consciousness mentally? P.S. Please excuse the lack of sufficient postage, but I didn't realize the letter weighed too much until after I had put it in the box. Yours, etc. Baby Ken asked Baby Barbie, "Want to play some make-believe again?" And she said, "Sure. What'll it be this time? Mama and Daddy, doctor and nurse?" And he replied, "No, this time let's go for the ultimate. Let's play being civilized." Even with the assistance of alcohol, religion, and drugs, most men would still find it difficult to make it through the night of life were they not able to believe that they are individually, in some way, somehow, someone special. This, in fact, is such an integral part of normal mental existence that men do, from the other corner of their mind, simultaneously condemn the excesses of pride, vanity, and egotism. And of course, excel. And of course, if you excel in your condemnation more than the norm, you will be considered even that much more special. In time of stress, the dumb will inevitably begin to refer to themselves physically. The dumb live under constant stress. Or those who don't know who they are be all the time wanting to tell you who they are. AKA, hey chump, what you looking at? Historical anomaly. Regardless of what you thought they said, Buddha or Socrates, neither one owned a mirror. Any viewer has this question regarding a recent subject. When you said that the best way to catch fish is to teach them to say "I," and then they'd simply drown, were you in fact making reference to what occurs when men's minds tell them that they are entities somehow separate from their physical environment? Our question for the day is, would a man with his own originality be bothered by its lack in others? Perhaps put a better way, should such a man? Yes, that's much more annoying. A faithful father asked his son. I don't feel like anybody appreciates. Periodically I try to watch TV and pick up little hints from, and this seems to be a... Are you supposed to look concerned? I think your eyelids kind of turned down like... Since it was hard to look concerned, I kept hoping this would make up for it. Because I never could figure out whether I looked concerned or like a chicken. You know what I'm trying? Well, there is always... A faithful father asked his son. A faithful father asked his son, are our individual personalities no more than the total sum of our mental operations? And the lad replied, should I not be the one asking you that? And the elder reflected for a moment and said, I don't know, should you? And the boy thought on it for a bit and answered, well, I don't really know. What do you think? And the father said again that he wasn't sure either. It is the ticking of genes that you hear every time you look at a clock or at the past. Generations come and generations go, but generations neither come nor go, just man's perceptions thereof. We interrupt to bring you this announcement. Everyone has two minds, the mind and the talking mind. Okay, everyone potentially has two minds. Now back to regular programming. Killer Roller Derby from Hell and Back Again. Brought to you by the Wooden Horsey Intellectual and Charitable Trust. And a viewer corresponds. Whenever I hear such things as that, I do wish that you'd let me go back to believing in grand conspiracies. Oh, all right, just this once. One guy has his own simple, all-inclusive approach, states he. The dumb are whoever I say is dumb. Friends, we could be witnessing the beginning of a whole new religion or political party or social movement or something. The matter of fame fricasseed. If you're not pissed about something, it's hard to draw attention to yourself. Timid wolves will follow an aggressive one. Sheep will submit to a shepherd, and weak genes will ride the wake of healthy ones. The question now is, to what expansive intellectual force will your mind give chase? This private query is balanced by man's public institutions assuring him that no such decision and subsequent effort is in fact necessary for an adequate life. To certain singularly sharpened eyes, objects are vague and only actions clear and distinct. Our guest optometrist for the day is Dr. Edward Nipples, who will be speaking on the subject, how to stare. And now, Dr. Nipples. The weak of mind like to reminisce. The dead like to talk about how good things used to be. And a boy asked his dad, "Is there some simple rule of thumb I could use to get through all of this?" And his papa replied, "Yes, just do this. Take whatever it is that ordinary people say are the attitudes and efforts necessary to live an acceptable life, and to yourself silently and with no rancor allowed say, screw it." You see, that is how good things used to be before the polarization into me and thee. And a father fish viewer nudged his young son and said, "Huh? What'd I tell you?" No. Antiquarian aquatic addendum. The original pattern for me and thee was the mental picture of an in here and an out there. The cortical conception of and division into an I and a not I by. The human heartbeat on the half shell. Did not alcohol and drugs have their equitable hangover cost, men would forever stay drunk and high. Were not similar circumstances prevailing in the worlds of religion and education, ordinary minds might actually get somewhere. And Mr. Daniels said to Mr. Dickel, "Don't hold your breath, old dear." The trouble in a polarized world with, that is, the limitations of, trying to figure out what life is about using only your standard issue intellect. The left foot believes the primary impediment to progress is the right foot. A man stood before the planet's largest collection of books, manuscripts, and research material and said to himself, all of this, and about nothing. And his mind said, "Ah, yes, but all about the most important nothing imaginable to man." From the ballrooms of city romance, a definition done to a T. Apologize. What partners do between dances. The best part of one man's awareness told the everyday part of his thinking. It's not that I know that specific things that you know are wrong. It's that I know that everything that you know is wrong. One of the unscheduled reasons that the transcendental experiences seem so mystical and complex is because they are so unprecedentedly plain and direct. That is, unprecedentedly so in your adult lifetime. After studying on some of the matters we've been discussing around here, one man spat out, "Boy, isn't that just how things are? We end up asking the birds if they or the cat should be in charge." In his ongoing effort to rearrange and restructure the workings of his own mind, one man's approach of the month currently is, quoting, "Danger does not frighten a dead man, and his mind is not all that sure it understands this. And even if it does, it's not all that sure it likes it." The math of culture on a bun. The public side, talent plus anger equals art. The personal side, originality plus cold blood produces creative perception. All of man's known myths, legends, fables, tales, and allegories are for those who forgot the original one. Look at the length of that mother. All right. Trying to get in shape for it. When the contracted ass delivery service failed to come through, the children at the party decided to play another game. Pin the answer on the question. And one little nipper got it going by asking the others, "What is it that actually holds civilization together?" And one little girl shouted, "The rules of law," only to be followed by a kid proclaiming nationalistic fidelity. And another lad yelled out, "Respect for personal property." And simultaneously, two kids cried out, "The concept of romantic love and monogamy." And still another youngster screamed, "Double entry bookkeeping." But the boy who had begun it all shoots them all into silence and offered up his own correct answer to the query he had proposed. No, my friends and fellow party-goers, good guesses one and all. But it strikes me that the one essential, obligatory prerequisite to civilization is that peculiar sort of seriousness unique to our parents and other adults. And I've got to tell you that this little observation he made just about put an end to their party. And oh yeah, I just got to ask you, did you actually hear this to be a story about children at a party, or perhaps about certain functions within one's own mind? Didn't mean to ruin your party. Don't ad lib. All right. In the city's public forum, a man with nothing to prove can prove nothing to those hanging about. Thus are our cities well protected even without physical fortifications. Justice fully revealed again at no more cost than an afternoon table dance. Though would-be mystics would seem to be, among all men, the most self-absorbed, those truly of the experience would be the least. And Moses turned to Zarathustra and said, I don't give a damn how good she looks. I ain't paying no $50 for a bottle of champagne. You see, friends and sports fans, even in the area of truth and beauty, inflation has taken its toll. And perhaps of some interest to you halftime snackers in the audience, this little item regarding the schematic gameplay is still in common use in the two major mortal leagues of hormones and neurons. To wit, the insights of a man with a stomach full of chili differs from those of a man on a fast. Additional note, there are those who have in the past already recognized this, they just don't know what to make of it. Because it just seems so obvious. The original inspiration for pork barreling, boondoggling, and all other forms of busy work was the everyday ordinary operations of the human mind. Criminal procedure in a creamy white sauce. To a more perceptive man, his initial normal mental life is like a probable cause hearing to determine if he will remain in intellectual detention. Oh well. And now, Mr. Once and for All says he wants to clear up one certain matter. Yes, you got it. Once and for all. The actual distinction between the mind and the body is as follows. The mind believes there is one, and the body knows there's not. Sometimes this one guy would slip up behind his normal thinking and pull down its pants while laughing and singing this little rhyme. Pick on the weak, pick on the strong, leave it up now, you won't be here long. Who knows for sure whether he's correct or not? But who's going to be around later to try and collect if he's not? A viewer writes in to say, if I let you take all of the mystery out of life, what fun will I have left? And if you're ordinary, his suspicion is correct. None. But what the hell, the rest of you can cheer up, right? And several viewers looked at one another and said, boy, are we glad we ain't mere viewers. Definition time again. Neurotransmitters, the world's first TV screen. Quick, Leroy, hand me that shoe. The human mind as is compared to how it could be as contained in a travel analogy. It is like the Queen of England flying tourist. See, some of you keep trying to ignore the fact that the titles, even when they're longer than the actual body, still have a connection. While they awaited the pool table to cool down, one kid asked his partner, what would you have if you removed the truly unknown from the imagined unknown? And his pard brushed some chalk dust from his vest and mused and replied, Education with no takers. Art with no critics. Religion sounds real estate. And a rack boy passing by with a large pitcher of draught muttered, "How's about just civilization minus its civility?" And some keen-eyed hormones at an adjoining table announced, "8-ball in the neural corner pocket," after which they all went home for the night. Definition a la carte. Metagnostic perception. A thinking fish with no conception of a boundary to the water. As the dutiful, did he say beautiful son was headed out the door in search of the coldest beer possible, his father reminded him, there is no such thing as partial understanding. And off he went. Man's ordinary thinking will never comprehend what life is about for the same reason that kids never want recess to end. Indeed. All right, since this is sort of connected with what we had been talking about, the math of culture on a bun. I guess by now we can skip the title. It has to do more or less with talent, creativity, and etc. You'll see. It was two things compared. The public side, talent plus anger equals art. Which I have pointed out in the past that ordinary humor, especially criticism by its very definition, is not possible, no matter what the preface is. If it apparently is academic in tone, without criticism, without hostility, there can be no criticism. Or if you try to be a critic, either personally, silently, or especially publicly and overtly, and you are without any anger, edge, hostility, they'll have you, even if you keep your general position, they'll have you switched over to the sports department in no time. So, this should not be any great secret. And so that you don't lose track and become a critic of criticism, this is not a criticism of criticism, as you know. But at the public level, at the ordinary city level of life, talent plus anger equals art. Or as all math works, if you want to look at it. For ordinary art, you've got to have some sort of talent, by anybody's definition. It's not up to us, who cares? If they say that somebody that, if somebody can play piano the way that Picasso painted, or if somebody tried to paint the way that Monk played piano, it is not art unless there's a certain kind of aggression. You've got some sort of talent that other people say, well, yeah, that's music, or the guy does have some technique on piano. There's no doubt. He does have the physical mechanics down of painting. So you got to have that, by their definition. By everyone's common definition at that time and place, that the man has some talent. For it to be art, there has to be that kind of talent plus an aggression, an anger. Then the little funny parallel that I drew was the personal side, away from the public arena. The personal side would be originality plus cold blood produces creative perception. If you recall last time, when I was threatened to bring in last time, and I was pointing out the edginess of human thought, that there is a physical basis for what I can call, can you? Yes, all right. The critical nature, the partisan nature of the mind. It always comes back to the polarized dynamics of what makes things apparently live and move in a three-dimensional world. It's just a fact. I know I keep bringing that up, and I keep thinking any day now somebody in the ordinary scientific world is going to bring out something like that if they hadn't already. But it is a simple fact. Now, I don't mean that that's the extent of life. But there has to be that. That is the beginning and end of all that's necessary, but it's absolutely the basic. It is the beginnings, the main thing that you've got to realize, that is not an attack, as would-be mystics and philosophers have always wanted to point out, or some of them have, about the great all right. At the crudest level, of course, it is still not looked at as being very, it's not open to any great question. Since somebody wrote the one and drug in Zarathustra here, under that shameful setting, I might add, being in a topless bar. But the idea of there being this great struggle between good and evil, light and darkness, and up and down. There are those that have attempted to be progressive mystics, whatever the hell that would be, enlightened mystics, whatever that might be, that would say, that's not true. That is far too limited. We're leaving out all shades of potential transcendental grayness, whatever the hell that would be. That it becomes a philosophical response or argument, an attempted philosophical expansion of a prior philosophical establishment and limitation of, well, it's always good against evil. It's always truth against error. Whether it's going to sound to be scientific and clerical, or whether it sounds to be more religious and mystical in tone. And then there are those that just, it's still not the prevailing view in any widespread philosophical sense, but there are those, always have been, they'll say, wait a minute, something smells here. We got real low level, we got real, Kmart type mystics here that say, well, there's only good and only evil. Or scientific philosophers, natural philosophers, that there's only truth and there's only error. There's places in there we can't be that sure, and that may be where the truth is lurking. It is, as I was trying to point out to you last Friday, last time we were meeting, the critical, the partisan, the dichotomous, the polarized, the yin-yang, the yes-no, the up-down nature of human consciousness is not some sort of superfluous add-on like Cadillac tried to do with fins in the 1959s, which didn't look all that bad, but that's just one man's opinion. The fins on your head are not some cheap afterthought. Well, the fins on your head are the slice between all this, mind, body, yes, no, etc. It springs from the very thing that you can see at the hormonal physical level, that there is a critical, an unstated, an unquestioned critical nature at the physical level, below the level of consciousness. This simply is. The obvious thing that you do not sleep in briar patches and you do not drink lighter fluid when you're thirsty. The critical decisions are made on the basis of this organism. My molecules, my genes are striving to survive. Therefore they do, if you're just ordinary insane. That is the basis. That is the only thing that makes it possible to even speak, is what appears to be, and it is at a basic level, absolutely minimal level, that there is a polarized, binary, dichotomous, etc. basis of reality. If there is not, then in a 3D world, by your ordinary senses, anyone's ordinary senses, things do not appear to be alive. They come down close to not existing. But even if they do exist, they're inanimate. That's another night and another story. But there is no viability. There is no observable dynamics to life without two forces going on. That's just, and to say, well, something's wrong about the idea of good and evil. To say it's wrong just shows your own density. You can say, well, that's possibly not the limitations, or to say it's either a matter of centrifugal force versus inertia. It's a matter of weak forces versus strong magnetic forces or nuclear forces. You can say anything you want to and say, but don't say that's wrong. Don't say that people are incorrect. Don't say that people are misled. You may say that our perceptions or their perceptions may be somewhat still confined. You can say that. But you have got to see at the physical level, to take your own body, that there is a critical, an absolutely necessary critical, continual critical basis to human existence, to physical existence. Or you would be dead. You would have committed, inadvertently at least, suicide before now. But when it gets here, as always, the mind Nobody seemed to, by the way, like the one. I didn't pull it out. That one guy said, boy, isn't that the way life goes? He'd been listening to me talk for a while, and he said, isn't that just like it? We end up asking the birds who should be in charge. We asked the bird, John, should you be in charge of the cats? And he's going, maybe I didn't ham it up enough. He's going, wow, is that the way life goes or not? Insinuating how stupid we are. We ask the birds, hey, who should be in charge, you or the cats? And then wait like, there's some possibility we're going to get more than one answer. It is the same thing, my dears, by the way, that people believe even after they would agree. That it just seems to be so self-evident that it's not open to any great discussion, that there are continual operations of a critical nature going on to keep you physically alive. But when it gets here, it immediately, to be understated, becomes suspect. But it's not. The critical basis of the polarized thinking of man is an absolute direct reflection of what is going on below the level of consciousness. Down in the nervous system, at the physical level, it is an outgrowth of it. And last time I was mentioning that there is an edginess, an aggression to ordinary thought, which, if you can see it in a certain way, an aggression, remember, is just a word. I started to say chrome instead of aggression. But well, as you see, I was afraid it would immediately lend itself to too much of an immediate connotation of fins and Cadillacs. And so instead of chrome, which was my first choice, I went ahead and said aggression. There is an edginess to human thought. And in these apparent mystical, religious, would-be consciousness-expanding realms of all sorts, again, I point out, this is at least an unstated reality, which is, although they normally are tied up into concepts of external higher forces outside a closed system, such as God and great cosmic forces, is understood on the basis, as reflected in the numerous practices of meditation, even the ingestion of certain drugs, the attempt to, in prayer, the attempt to just be reflective, the whole idea of in some way trying to calm the mind. And if not calm the mind, if it gets into more personalized areas, it is for a person to be more humane, to be less a judge of his fellow man, to let God's fate sort it all out, and for you to be magnanimous, be charitable, be loving. And it all sounds perhaps to be variations of a central theme, if not absolutely separate entities, but it's all the same thing. Because at the physical level, like the man tonight, the Mr. Once and for all that went ahead and answered it for you, that the answer between all this question about is there a division, is there a difference between the mind and the body, it's this. The mind says there is, thinks there is, and the mind and the body knows there's not. The body knows. Don't lose your place. The body knows that all this idea about charity, humanitarianism, love of fellow man, insofar as what is represented to the birds, when you talk to the birds about such ideas, of course they're the ones that you think talk to you first because you think the past was behind us. But that's another story, thank God. The body knows that that is, the cats understand that what the birds talk about charity and etc., pardon the jeu de moi perhaps, but will not fly. No. Cats know that they're going to eat birds if they could, and they know this. They know if the bird's getting bigger and can grow fangs and teeth, the birds will eat them. Yeah. The cats know that. The cats don't have to talk about it. The cats are the strongest. The birds are the weaker of the two. Therefore, the birds are the ones to make up for it. Life being just as it is. Not just as it is, life being just as it is. The birds have, in lieu of fangs and teethies, they have what? Speech. Which was back to the man who said, boy, isn't that just like us? We ask the birds. See, I can keep trying it. The body Hormones. The cats know that all this idea about there being the possibility or being the proper possibility, the proper situation to carry it to its civilized extreme, as it's normally verbalized, that we should not be operating at a critical level. That we are our brother's keeper. We should be. Say the birds. Remember, you ask the birds how things should be, the birds will always tell you. But you're an idiot to think that you don't know what the answer from the birds are. You ask the birds, pick out the rattiest looking bird you can find. Pick out a bird that looks like, I hate to get, look, pick out a bird that looks like he may play guitar and came from certain areas of the South that I won't go into. And ask him, should we all be civilized? Should we care about our fellow man? Should we be decent sorts? And even the crudest bird is going to say, sure. Okay, I tried 3 times on you. The cats do not have, they cannot speak, but if you ask the cats about the matter of trying to calm the mind, and it being finally an operational reflection, if it was actually achieved, of the full realization of the human potential, the civil, humane potential of man, that is, I live for my fellow man. I am as concerned about my fellow man as I am myself. I would give myself over to my fellow man. I worry about my fellow man as much as I do myself. If birds could talk, birds would go, God damn, what is this? They know it's folly. That is not the basis. There is no such critical faculties below the level of consciousness in the hormonal physical life of man, in the genetic life of man. There simply is not. It is, although there is no philosophy such as this, it's every gene for himself. Which makes it just right because every gene works for life. See, so life can't lose. It's like life says, all right, you guys fight it out. They don't even have to say that, but it could say, all right, all you guys down in there, fight it out and let me know who wins. It knows who wins. It wins. Do you have to call down to your stomach and say, well, I'm going to send down, let's see, I'm going to send down some pumpernickel, some fairly, nice job, done with good, and I'm going to send down that and perhaps part of a hot dog, and I may send down a little red wine. I don't discuss it. You guys fight it out down there. Yeah. The stomach acids, all the juices, you fight it out and let me know. Let me know what's going to happen. Yeah. Perhaps I exaggerated enough to get you distracted again. The point is, you know who's going to win. Maybe I shouldn't have picked up. Whatever you send down, you're going to win, as long as it wasn't poison. Which is a third story because there is no poison alive. But at any rate, at the physical level, there are no critical decisions to be made because you can't lose. Life cannot lose. The cats cannot lose. The birds cannot lose because they presently cannot win, and therefore they have to talk about the very things that the cats could not play, the sports that the cats would not participate in. That's the only way that gives the illusion that the mind has some power that supersedes the body. That's why the birds can sing and the cats can't. Because there is no match. And so the match is that you ask the birds, what do you think about so-and-so? And the birds can just badmouth the hell out of the cats. And the cats can't answer. I mean, they can kill them. And I know it gets hard to see perhaps at some time. Just look at it this way. You're going to die. But between here and there, it seems as though if you're civilized, if you're modern, it seems as though that the birds have a fighting chance, which is what civilization is. Not just a fighting chance, but at least at the bare minimum, civilization seems to be a holding strategy, seems to be a holding position in some sort of battle between the Philistine cats at the gate, which are not at the gate, they are the gate, but between uncivil behavior of man and just this thin line of civility, this veneer of birds going, well, we could do better, tweet, tweet. And just every now and then people get the real shivers of thinking, do you realize that we're just a cheap away from, back in the woods with a tiller, back to living in the bogs. There is an edginess then in the mind, and it is not a flaw. It is not some sort of spiritual curse. It is not a psychological misstep that man has made. But notice that the very systems, the very hobbies in life, such as the so-called mystical and transcendental practices and traditions and religions, if you could hear it at a certain core of it, how is their intent a further subjection, sublimation, repression of cats, of critical facilities in man, and an encouragement of the non-critical, which seems to be the ultimate goal of religion. And not to just leave it at that, it seems to be the supreme aim in mind of civilization, that we would no longer be critical of one another. We would no longer be critical of life. If any of you are as lost as some of the looks on your face, it made sense to a lot of you last time we were talking when I pointed out that there has to be a critical, in a true sense, faculty in the mind or it would not operate. And the easy way to see it is the mind can look at life, the birds can look at life and see life not as it is, to see things not as they are, but as how they could be. That I could put this lever, I could put this limb under this little rock and stick it under the big rock there, which is laying on my mother, my son, and if I do this, I can move it. Whereas if I don't, I can't. The cats simply look at life, and life is as it is. Hormones look at life, and there's nothing to be said. Their critical facilities cannot be altered whatsoever, nor should they, because it would be suicidal. It is only here. Not only is it not suicidal, it is its very raison d'etre of being there. That it looks at life, looks at the life that the cats would be leading, and in certain aspects, periodically, so every moving parade goes, wow, wait a minute, we could do better than that. They invented automobiles, that ain't bad. Better than a horse, better than walking. And then pretty soon somebody went, automobile's pretty good, but the friction on land, what if we could take a car and put it up in the air? Pretty soon they were doing that. They did that for a while. Piston-driven engines. And they went, boy, this is slow. I mean, there's so much less friction up here in the air than there is on land. Why are we using the same sort of technology here in the air that we did on land? We could do better than that, so they came up with jet propulsion. It is a continuation of the mind being critical in the sense that it looks at life and it goes, wait a minute, things don't have to be like that. Whereas to the cat, to the hormones, to the non-intellectual aspect of life, which is, we should never forget, is just as important as the mental. And the cats tried their best to go, what do you mean just as important? I know. It doesn't cost any. Why not be nice to them? That is the basic picture I was trying to give of the critical and the non-critical and the non-judgmental sense of the human intellect, that it is based upon discriminating again about what things are as opposed to how the mind says, wait a minute, it could be otherwise. This carried a little bit past that necessary area of seeing life as it could be, circumstances, as opposed to how it is currently. From there, it goes into human behavior, just a small step. And again, it's not a mistake, but you must see that it is not as open to immediate or tangible efforts as saying, well, we got an airplane and we got these kind of piston-driven internal combustion engines, but wait a minute, now we're in the air, why couldn't we do something else? And you can make a change. You can move from a piston-driven engine to somebody comes up with that kind of opposing force as inherent in jet propulsion and rocket-driven engines. That is one thing. But then to look at the human mind, to look at human behavior is the way they want to call it, But you look at humans as they are and go, wait a minute. Look how selfish humans are. Why don't humans not be selfish? Why don't we make a change? And instead of a lever, instead of coming up with a new form of mechanics, they come up with a new philosophy. They come up with a new social program. They come up with a new political paradigm. Then you have a certain kind of edginess that is the basis of the many religions and mystical traditions, etc., of trying to come up with ways in which men could in some way get away from that. They're not sure what to call it, and so they always have to lapse back into it's a mistake that was made in the evolution of man, or back at a cruder level, it's a curse, it's a debt we're paying off, that God, we made him mad, man went astray somewhere, and we got to straighten it out. The mind just, it wandered off and it got too far in some strange direction. When the roads diverged, the mind found a third one and just wandered off. Got burrs all in its shoes and socks. This critical aspect that I was mentioning last time, back to this, I was giving a slight twist tonight. That the edginess, this critical aspect, is not the opposite from tonight. I was hoping you would already put together yourself and go, wait a minute, you're contradicting yourself. I always have to do it. I'll do it for you. Sounds better, I guess, because I know how to do it. Originality plus cold-blooded. Cold blood produces creative perception. Sang-froid. It's cold blood in this sense. You remember where we are. I was doing two definitions. One seems to be public collective speech, observation. Ordinary observation. Observation of ordinary life. To wit, talent plus anger equals art. That is what seems to be art. That is the basis, that is the bare requirement for art at the ordinary level. And by art, I mean everything. Or if you want to get a little more specific, everything other than science and technology. All religion, literature, philosophy, art. It takes talent of some sort plus anger, an edginess. It's not wrong. Without it, you do not have art. Then, the comparison is the personal side, the more private, the non-collective possibility. And it goes like this. Originality plus cold blood produces creative perception. And after all this time, I was sort of hoping that some of you go somewhere along the line, wait a minute. See, if we change cold blood there to critical, the originality plus critical attitude produces creative perception. You can say, wait a minute. See, now you're denying what you said. That's what I was hoping you'd do. So I did it for you. Does cold blood equal the same thing as critical attitude? And since I'm the one who wrote it and defining what I mean by it, the answer is, damn, I had it. Oh, no. The answer is no. Well, it is. I wrote it right down. Originality plus cold blood produces creative perception. I could define this also as that's what would be less confined, less restrained awareness as opposed to ordinary thinking. Because ordinary thinking is not cold-blooded. So ordinary people would say, I know the term cold blood, I didn't make it up. They say, well, cold blood means somebody's real, aggressive and pushy. And I know it can be, that's the way they use it. But cold blood, how about? Just absolute, from the cat view, impassioned. Which, again, there have been sizable segments in history of people. It's not prevailing. It is not middle of the stream of ordinary thought, but a continual arising of people saying we should be, in some way, intellectually impartial. In fact, if you bring it out, you won't find any intellectual, ordinary civilized person who will deny that. They'll go, well, yes, you've got to be that way. That's what science is all about. And the more civilized, sophisticated they are, they would say, in fact, that attitude should be more adopted by those not just within the scientific community, by those who might be drawn to the kind of superstitious pursuit of religions, people with incorrect social attitudes, that if we would mentally be more impartial, life would be better. Things would run more efficiently, and perhaps we could get Mussolini to the train station on time for a change. I don't think I had that one written down right, but you can sort it out at your leisure. How does cold blood fit with originality? If my first line, if I was giving you a fair detailing of the way life works, that art always equals some sort of talent, doesn't matter what, but some sort of talent, but you have got to have the addition of an aggression. That's not open to question, it's just not normally spoken of to any practical end, because the bourgeois, they always know. The more so we got the comparison between the middle class, ordinary people, and whatever art seems to be the prevailing, the cutting edge avant-garde of the day, the more the ordinary will look at it and go, those people, the artists or musicians, whoever they are, they're going to say they're nothing but a bunch of snot-nosed young smartasses. They're right. That's not much of a description. You can hardly get a job on a major daily paper if that's the extent of your critical literate facilities, to call them a bunch of smart-ass kids, but that's it. That's why you got kids. That's why you got a new generation. That's why you're supposed to be reinventing your own self neurally to give you the blues. Not me. I'd rather be fat and 40 and sit down. I know. But art, if it's going to be art, has got to have an aggression to it. There's just no doubt about it. A hostility. Or put another way, the one tonight that a few of you did respond to that pointed out it was the matter of fame presented fricasseed, that if you're not pissed about something, it's awfully hard to draw attention to yourself. I mean, it's awfully hard to show up in a public forum, in a gallery, in a museum, on a concert stage, at a literary convention, and to take the podium. And if you're not pissed about something, you're not going to be remembered. You'll probably not even get written in a review by the college reporters that show up. You got to have an attitude. There's got to be an edge to your thought. And the discrimination, the judgment of how much of an edge is acceptable changes from time to time, minute to minute, from one city to another, but it's of no importance. It is important that if you are not pissed about something, if you do not have some attitude, and I know they don't say pissed, they say something like, well, I have a certain well-founded, educated, and I'll admit it, critical attitude toward that kind of political question, or these kinds of suggestions being made now by the government concerning new social programs. No, wait just a minute. I know my history, blah, blah, blah. You got to be pissed. There has to be an edge. But the same people could take what I have said and say, well, that's all you're saying about cold blood. And to them I say, well, I'm in a hurry, so we're running out of time. I didn't have time to string together a sentence that made any sense. That makes sense. Everyone understands that. Nobody likes it. I know it's not in very common use. I can't remember. Well, I'm like you. I can't remember the last time I heard of any sort of important debate being won by one guy finally going, maybe that's why more of us don't go out to entertaining literary soirees anymore. From any ordinary view, if anybody had followed this, by my own statements, if we take that as any operational basis of fact, insofar as there being anything, quote, or anything resembling, quote, an impartial mind, an objective attitude, it's not possible, because I've already stated, the birds live only by the grace of the cats. We think only by grace of the body. We think ordinarily only on a critical basis. Without a critical basis, there is no reason to think. There is none. So, having said that, and having just 30 seconds before said something else, then you got to go, Jesus. that I've just proven. I've admitted by my own admission, by my own proof, there is no such thing as ordinary objective thought. Right. So what? Now back to, that's not just being, it's back to this. That all of you, many people throughout the world still have great faith, and one time you had probably even greater faith in what you had read about, dreamed about, heard about of great mystical traditions, or of sitting in one position trying to calm the mind, trying to starve oneself into some sort of spiritual sublimeness. Don't write me. Some great expanded state of consciousness through some ritualistic behavior. It's the same thing I've been pointing out. That is exactly what they're intending without knowing it, is they're trying to reach a place wherein the birds are absolutely set free from the cats, which physically is impossible, I know, so what else is new? But that is exactly what the dreams are. That is exactly what reverberates within people's nervous system when they hear the idea, when they see a photograph, when they just dream about great holy wise men, yogas, and all sorts of people, that in some way they seem to be alive, they seem to be functional, and yet they seem to be untouched. They seem to be free from the kinds of things, not physically, that's really crude, that they can survive nude in a snowstorm. I know that sounds nice, so they can fly through the air and walk on water, and that's for children. All you got to do is go a little bit further and think, well, you're a little more sophisticated and insightful, and what you're doing is thinking you could be oblivious to the elements, not just the snow, and not just being able to defy gravity and walk on water, is defy gravity neurally. Is that you picture these men, and somebody go by and look at them and go, you ugly, fat, naked, so-and-so. And and your dream is they're not involved in any sort of intellectual, internal struggle like, well, now I'm supposed to be a good Hindu, I'm supposed to be a good Buddhist, and I shouldn't let that bother me. Yeah. As soon as I started the first word of that, you understand you're done for. You're back on the seesaw if you ever left it. You're operating courtesy of the wooden horsey, intellectual charitable trust. You're on the merry-go-round again. You're back to the polarized world. If you're saying, well, I should be, hey, you're the birds and the cats. As soon as you say, well, I know I shouldn't be, the dream is, but you can't even dream about it on a polarized basis. You can't dream correctly because you dream, well, if I was like that, if there are people like that, they resist it. No, they don't. Resisting it is not doing it. Resisting it is, you have, in a real sense, internally, you have set the birds free, freer than is normal. And they no longer fly out of fear of the cats. They no longer fly trying to get out of the house of the cats. You can't get out of the house of the cats. That's the real, you're really in nutty dreams and to think, well, my mind will turn loose and soar away. Yes, yes. Out of my body. No, 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 no. Well, out of the grip of my body. No, 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 no. Out of the grip of the past. No, 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 no. Out of the talons of, crude physical genetics. No, 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 no. No, you're going crazier and crazier. Which, of course, makes it safe. As long as the birds think, well, if I could just get this door open, I'll fly away and get out of the house. It's still, again, part of life's built-in safety mechanism. As long as they can drive all the would-be mystics nuts, it's all right. You can. There's a way. Consider the cold-bloodedness of the mind. I repeat, we're out of tape. Originality plus cold blood produces creative perception. It is the only way. Creative perception, I didn't just try and, wait. I mean something by it. It would be a clear-sighted view of life. It would be seeing life point blank as everyone did once before you blinked. It is a creative perception. But it is what everyone dreams of, no matter what the guise is, or everyone especially who believes that they're interested in such matters as this, is to be clear-sighted. To have the mind, of course, by the mind, then they think, well, past sins, past psychological traumas, all sorts of crap. Trying to fool around, manipulate my mind. That's all the mind is. The mind's not a puppet on a string. The mind is strings. No. There is a kind of cold-bloodedness of the mind that if you do not have it and you can't be original with it, then you'll simply end up maybe as an artist. That is nuts. Now, consider, since we're out, the cold-bloodedness of the mind. In one sense, it's not there yet collectively, but in one sense, that is the purpose of the mind, to be cold-blooded. It is a fair detailing in only how many letters? 9 letters of what everybody else has to go. Transcendental mystical experience and all that. 9 letters, cold blood. But you got to know what you're talking about. Not cold blood down here. Down here is cold blood. Everybody else is fighting, hey, I don't want to be cold-blooded. That's why they're saying, let's be civilized and care for our fellow man. See, they're trying to work up to the point that you're supposed to already be there and go, well, screw this. You know, I'm still in the hands of the cats. You can be cold-blooded, but it's not the same thing as being cold-blooded down here. Down here, that's being uncivilized. That's completely unacceptable. You're a madman. Hey, I was going to say something like, well, it's more colorful than doing this, and plus you can put it in a book and carry it around and show it to people.